Blessed love and peace. We cooking rice. So, wow, we're giving all types of dumb joints for the boob tube. That's what we call TV back in the day. And the boob meaning somebody who's stupid. Stupido. It's stupido. Beginning of the day. Daylight. Energy. What up? Refreshing from the rest of dreaming, the dreaming, heavenly, otherworldly. Alhamdulillah, hallelujah, Baruch Hashem, Jai Om, Shishem Ado. Alright, let's get into this because we ain't got a lot to go. Udi, the rice is not for us. How about that? Alright. Got a few things to share. Try to stay on the essential, or the further essential. How about the first thing? First things first. Why not? All that. What was the first thing? Come on. Religion. All right, so religion. So this is a little bit of a next level type of articulation, particularly for those who are not just religious practitioners, but are like learned, like know how things are going, and particularly those who are still honest, and modest, pious, and otherwise very quiet, not being out there with lots of kinfolk or whatever. So we're articulating this as a rationale, a reasoning, explanation, not an excuse. We are responsible for everything we do, but an explanation of why we don't do certain things at this moment, that we want to, that we should do, that we need to. Extenuating circumstances is the short of it, but we're just going to give some explanation because it's important. And we're still working on how to solve this. So it's a matter of recognizing this simple. And again, this is applying to a number of different religious communities because that's the nature of our relationship. And right there, that can just disqualify the consideration from those who are pious and steeped within one's own specific tradition. However, for those who are honest, this is what we're sharing in earnest genuineness and solicitation for reasoning and cooperation and like let's talk about this. So basically, it's a matter of recognizing that when somebody becomes religious, when somebody's practicing a spiritual path, there are considerable vulnerabilities within that. The pious path has a lot of rules in terms of what not to do, a lot of rules in terms of what to do. A lot of those rules take people away from the competition, take people away from defenses, weaponry, tactics, enslavements, and other things like that, in order to abide by these rules, these laws of piety and righteousness. And so it behooves, it's beneficial for people in this path to work together, to live in community, to support each other in these different, in this specific ethics and piety, and just the pragmatics of life. Just to like, it's better. There's economies of scale when we work together. We can produce further than if we just work separately. So that's how many kinfolk balance those vulnerabilities. And in religious communities, the things that are valued are very different than in conventional society, mainstream society. It's not about money. It's not about cars. It's not about big houses. It's matter about basic necessities, quality clothes that last, and being mindful of that. It's investing in clothes that last longer because that's what's frugal and prudent in the long run. And the main thing is doing studies, doing the practices, doing the rituals, observing the traditions and the obligations, and that's what's valued. Now there's still pretenses and there's superficiality and everything else, but anyways, point here is Community works together because the community is vulnerable, increasingly vulnerable. Can't just like go out and just kill people. Can't just go out and do whatever. Can't just go out and have sex. Can't just go out and use sex as a motivation for other people, to enslave people, to get other people to work, to get contracts and treaties or whatever. Can't do all that type of stuff. And so there's a disadvantage in working in a mainstream society where you can do those things, lightweight, legit. So not legit, but like the actual facts. So there's a vulnerability. Long story short, there's a vulnerability, and it behooves kinfolk to work to and live together, directly, physically, village together, strengthen numbers, security, education, resources, meaning like agriculture, additionally. So there's that. Now, when kinfolk are considered as different, that's how do we put this? All right. Whether it's coming from a mixed heritage experience, whether it's coming from, as a proselyte, whether it's coming as somebody who's a what let's call it in Islam is a revert or a convert. Actually, it's not even. I have to think about what the difference is between revert and convert, because I'm talking about somebody. There's the proselyte, that's the one who's converted, but then there's the one who's like been part of the community the whole time but hasn't been observant. So, anyways, in each of those situations, a person is increasingly vulnerable in being involved in the religious community because the person doesn't have as much standing, doesn't have much knowledge, is not as valued as a knowledgeable practicing member of that religious community. The person is accepted but very low. And the understanding is, you got to learn, you got to go through the channels and everything else like that. And so that's life. That's how it is. Now the challenge, however, is when there is corruption within the religious community. When it's systemic corruption, when the entire religious community is maybe just a smidgen corrupt, or a smodgen. A smodgen is a larger amount, however you figure that out. Then in that corruption, the newcomers, people who are vulnerable within that religious community, are increasingly leveraged and oppressed, subjugated, because they can't leave the religious community because that's just bonkers. As I would know, it's the wilderness. It's wild, and it's fierce. And so, but then when in the religious community, it's the corruptions are manipulative and subjugate the person, withhold things, require things, and this, that, and the other, in an unjust and in a way that violates the principles within that community. And it doesn't have to be out and out corruption, like out huge, just even minor. A minor amount is huge because there are few other options a person has outside of that community. And the community knows that. So anyways, and even then, people still leave because it's like, nah. So that's what we're communicating. Now, one of those things that across the board with each religious community is being a citizen of the United States. Understanding, okay, I'm talking about this specifically within the context of Judaism. Understanding for the Orthodox practitioners, recognizing that how the U.S. Constitution is abrogation of the mitzvot, and its devaluation, its dehumanization, its categorical doctrinal subordination of kinfolk who are of African ancestry, kinfolk who are of Native ancestry, and further, is an abrogation of the protocols, the responsibilities amongst Bnei Israel. So when those laws are applied, and they are applied to actual children of Israel, mixed heritage and further, when other children of Israel are citizens, proactively proscribe, sign, and vow, and pledge to uphold those laws and enforce those laws, that's an abrogation of the mitzvot, and that is persecution against children of Israel. And that's one of the things that there's a difficulty in embracing within the shul because of that. And it's not hate, that's just facts. Now within the Ummah, a specific example of this is, again, I've said it before, when the brethren is in a police uniform with a gun on, police issued handgun, performing salat in Juma, same thing. And it's not just a matter of like a symbolic, oh, it's a difficulty. No, it's the ummah that is subjecting itself, that is submitting itself to the man conventional law of that land. And therefore, people who go to the ummah, to the masjid and otherwise, for that strength and that support, and otherwise, in being vulnerable as a Muslim, offering salat 5 times a day, and additionally, the support provided from the ummah and the masjid is compromised because the ummah itself and the masjid itself is subjecting itself, is subordinating and submitting itself to the imperial laws, the unjust laws, and otherwise. So, again, and that manifests itself in again, just nuanced rules of, well, no, withholding things, restricting things, and putting all these obstacles in people's paths to prevent kinfolk from just being stable, just being healthy, and additionally, and being further dependent within the specific religious community. And it's a form of enslavement. It is persecution, and that's against the teachings of the Quran. It's against the teachings of the Torah. And further, we can talk about the Bible, and additionally, however, that's just some examples. So that's part of the challenge, and part of the necessity of religious communities acknowledging this, owning up to it, and letting go of the atrocities, the persecutions, the injustice that citizenship, imperial citizenship itself is, because it's an abrogation to the religiosity itself. And as we said before, there's less and less luxury of pretending otherwise and faking it and buying it off, buying children off, one's own children, other children, proselytizing people, promising prosperity or whatever else. There's less and less luxury. And so we're just communicating what the experience is. And it's no excuse. We do our best. And we have to answer for everything we do and everything we don't do. But we're communicating this for kinfolk's own well-being, interest, and awareness, to be honest about this and talk about this. It's extremely difficult because there's extreme amount of pressure within the imperial construct not to like acknowledge these things and admit these things. So that's one thing. Now, I'm gonna get off that for the moment. We're just beginning the day, so this is not gonna be. Let's try and make this like 20. How about that? If I say 20, maybe 30. If I say 30, it's gonna be 60. So let's not talk about this. Do it. Continuing on to the next joint. All right. Okay. So this one is about the what they say, REM, rapid eye movement. It's the end of the world as we know it. I almost sing that on key. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. That's a very interesting adaptation in terms of arrangement, original arrangement. REM 1989. Anyways, all right. People keep talking about this and whatever else, but there's like one scenario of like just annihilation, like nuclear holocaust, nuclear disaster, and warfare and bombs and just destruction and bunkered it up and everything else like that. So that's one scenario of how people perceive it or whatever else. And then things emerge, and then people say, "Oh, this we're talking about war's been going on for thousands of years." So, anyways, that's one thing. Now the second scenario is kind of on the other end of the spectrum of like nature, like cleansing, culling human species through disease and otherwise. Global warming is somewhat along those lines in terms of pollution and environmental, but particularly disease. COVID is one example, but COVID, we can further estimate that being a laboratory construct. East, west, what's the difference? But just nature, even beyond the laboratory convolutions, nature, just naturally, organically manifesting disease and whether it's famine, whether it's natural disasters or whatever else. But just, it's enough of this people pollution, blah blah blah. So those are two kind of like not necessarily bookends of the spectrum in terms of like Armageddon or otherwise. But what we're recognizing, first of all, just we have to pause and like just for a disclaimer, just put things in context. The end of days exists for thousands of years. The end of days is every day, and actually, the Bab from the Baha'i faith communicates this in a certain way as we understand. But it's just a matter of like this is an esoteric, primordial experience. And particularly when people get older, people start thinking about it further. How about that? So it's psychosomatic. Anyways, that being said, with these gray hairs, um, what we observe is the whole nuclear situation of just blow up and or people civil war and this and the other. We're not discounting that, but at the same time, there's that's that. What we consider is like how would it happen or how can we anticipate it happening in a plausible way, but like in a thorough like and this is not we're not wishing this. We're just recognizing what conditions are, what nature is, what history is, what track records are, and otherwise. And so what we recognize is the prospect, the approach, even the present conditions of quiet catastrophe. And the quiet catastrophe is one where um, people just disappear. It's like it's like the norm, and gradually, increasingly, like just people, the population just quietly decreases. Sometimes there might be an explanation. Sometimes it might just be like, oh, I haven't heard from so and so in a while. Oh, that's interesting. To the point where now the human population all of a sudden is a billion, is 700 million. Significant, but it's quiet. It's a quiet catastrophe. And so then, well, what would be? How would that manifest? What specifically? How would that happen? It happens. Well, one's already happening. Um, the general mechanics of it is it happens through systemized individualism, and within systemized individualism, each being becomes increasingly vulnerable to predatoriness, particularly human predatoriness. Um, and whether that's being sequestered in a jail cell, whether it's being sequestered in a psych ward, whether it's being sequestered in a halfway house, physical rehab location, whether it's drug rehab or whatever else, whether it's unemployment, impoverishment, homelessness, um, uh, transfer from one school to another, transfer from one job to another, um, leave with no explanation, ghosting. That's what it is. Society is ghosting itself. Um, there was one other one I was thinking of when I was going through that list. Um, uh, Systemized individualism. Oh, when I was talking about halfway house, I'm talking particularly about like being put in convalescence centers, but being institutionalized and just living in a unit. It's not necessarily torture or whatever, but it's just sequestered, and increasingly separated from everybody else, everything one knows, and then just being held until one shrivels away. That's one scenario. Actually, it's a multitude of scenarios in each of the ones I described. So it's systemized individualism, where people become increasingly and overwhelmingly dependent upon institutions and machinery, the system, um, and less direct communication relationship with others, and thus, when decisions are made, this, that, and the other, it's not even a matter of, I mean, maybe it's like the new Jim, they say called the new Jim Crow. How about the new Hashoah, the new Holocaust? Instead of being put in trains altogether and put in concentration camps, it's a matter of being isolated and one by one being taken to places nondescript. And depending upon how much hostility there is towards one in that process, the treatment being accordingly. So it's nasty. So, but that's actually what's happening at this moment. Now, we're going to describe one particular scenario that is of concern, and I'll just communicate it like this. A while ago, there's a film called Silence of the Lambs. It's like a psychological thriller type of mystery thing or whatever. Jodie Foster, Sir Somebody, what's his name? Blah blah blah. Anthony Hopkins, and probably some other kinfolk as well. But those are the main actors in the film. Anyways, it's about FBI agent. Jodie Foster plays a young FBI agent who's searching for a young sister who got kidnapped. Happens to be that the sister is the daughter of a senator, and she is kidnapped by a serial killer. But the serial killer is any serial killer is going to be like a psychological differentiation. However, this one is particularly further out because the method and the intention of the serial killer is to kidnap, abduct young women who are overweight, or make them overweight, so that they have loose skin or that they have bigger skin, then to starve them so that their skin gets loose, and then to kill them, and then remove the skin and make a human dress out of skin. And so this was in the 80s, and this is when LGBTQ was not too tough of a thing. So part of the like the background of this serial killer is that the serial killer was a man, a young like middle-aged man or whatever, maybe 30s or something like that, young middle-aged, and who was like, I guess, wanted to get a sex change but was refused or whatever, so was going through that kind of sexual frustration, confusion, hatred kind of thing, and wanted to be a woman. And so if he couldn't like get the surgery, then he was resigned to just like kill women and then make a human dress out of the skin of the women, in order for him to be that woman that he wants to be. That's the film. That's the 80s. So so he kidnaps this sister, and he has this dungeon in his house. He digs out this dungeon and has her in a pit, and it's all blacked out. The whole house is blacked out and everything, and he's just like keeping her there alive so that she can like lose weight, and he wants her to put cream, and he talks to her like a thin. It puts cream on her. It puts cream on its skin. It eats the food in like a very dehumanizing way that actual is very normalized today, how people talk with each other. It's a dehumanizing thing. People talk to each other like dogs. So, and that's where we're getting to in sharing this, Jeremy, because that's what we observe in terms of, that's the scary, unspoken, quiet calamity, is how we have predators, human predators that are feeding off other people, literally cannibals, pedophiles, human trafficking, in additionally, and being one of the significant factors and actors of these disappearances, amidst the systemized individualism, and the increased vulnerabilities to predatoriness. These predators live in suburban areas, cul-de-sacs, rural areas, out in the cut, in the hood, and otherwise. Every facet of socioeconomic experience of society, predators are living and scoping who's sleeping, who's vulnerable, who's isolated, and doing the do. And there might be many motivations, whether it's making a human dress out of human skin, whether it's eating people like Jeffrey Dahmer, whether it's just raping and killing a woman, whether it's raping and killing a dude, raping and killing children, nasty, horrendous atrocities. Predators are doing this at this very moment. And the thing is, police are just as vulnerable as anybody else is, because the predators are increasingly skilled. And the scary thing is how today, the way the film ends, eventually the FBI agent, at the very dramatic spoiler alert, the FBI agent kills the serial killer, and the young girl is saved, the young sister is saved. So it's still the 80s, where there were the happy ending Hollywood stuff or whatever, even for psychological, gritty, nasty, vulgar, R-rated films. And interestingly enough, psychologically, the audience is led to like actually champion a serial killer who is even crazier than that, not crazier, more further violent and sadistic, perhaps, than the main villain. Um, One second, the rice. Sir Anthony Hopkins plays the role of the old school um, serial killer. He's locked up in like the super security place or whatever, because he's such a genius, and like he's so manipulative, and he knows how to like take like a pin and like kill somebody easy. So he's in this super security thing, but the FBI agent has to go to him to ask him for advice about how to catch the serial killer, because he's like he's like a benign, he's like a very charismatic killer, and he kills for a purpose. Like he's like the principled killer. Um, so the FBI agent goes to him to get some advice about how to catch this actual active serial killer. But the interesting thing about the psychology of the film is that the audience is actually led. Oh, it's all the film's fault, but that's the manipulation. The audience is led to actually have um, affection for the Anthony Hopkins character. Um, Even, again, another spoiler alert, even as Anthony Hopkins' character um, breaks out of jail and is actually venturing out, literally, or at that, I mean, venturing to kill another person. It just happened to be like a captor who was basically abusing him or whatever. So there's this sense of revenge or whatever else. But still, it's important to recognize like the audience in that film, the way it's presented. Anthony Hopkins, he's a nasty, eating people's faces off of them, and like in listening to classical music, talking about eating somebody's liver with a nice bottle of Chianti. Like he's a nasty killer, but at the same time, he's like the way he's presented additionally is one of charisma, and he's funny, he's intelligent. So there's a charisma to people who are high intelligence, and he's helping her. He's doing something that's helpful, because he's supposed to be like the benevolent killer. He only killed people who were doing something or that had something loathsome about it. But still, again, being careful about that psychology, because 30 years later, 40 years later, Kombonga. Yo, life happens so buddy. Anyways, 40 years later, like what we're getting to is this. What we observe in society is now the blend of the FBI agent and the serial killer. Like that's like that's what we observe in the digital culture, whereby predators. It doesn't have to be serial killers who are trying to make human skin dresses, but predators. Imperialism is predatoriness. Civilization is predatoriness. And back in the 80s, 90s, we didn't hear too much about serial killers. We heard one here, one there, and it was a big thing. Ted Bundy, um, Ted Kaczynski. I don't know what this Ted situation is, but um, the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, Ted Bundy. There's, I mean, the other ones. Jeffrey Dahmer, yeah, obviously, from Cleveland, the area, Ohio. Actually, I think he was in Milwaukee when he was doing his thing, though. There's a Charles Manson. That was a kind of like a one-time situation. Anyways, anytime these things happen, it was a huge thing. Now it's like we hear these stories all the time, extremely frequently on YouTube. Seeing like here's another example of serial killers are actually caught, and it's like it's so frequent, and that's the ones who are caught. Um, but then when you find out, when you look and you're like, wait, how come? Wait, hold up. All these murders that are unsolved in big cities and rural areas, in addition, all these missing people. Yo, missing people. All of a sudden, the discovery of a house with 60 children being trafficked. It's a regular, I mean, like, beyond just like the school shootings and everything, but just like the quiet calamity of the predatoriness. And the reason why that's the psychological killer side of it. But the FBI side of it is that people have the same, very, very similar access to information on other people that the FBI does 40 years ago. Elon Musk himself says that a 12-year-old today with an iPhone has greater power than the president in 1980. So now it's a matter of predators having access and easy access or easier access to the predatoriness, and thus, I mean, the game has to evolve now because whatever. I'm not trying to get into the scenario about like giving ideas about that or whatever, but just to recognize that that's the thing, and that people are in that in this systemized individualism. People are increasingly vulnerable to individual predators, to cooperative partnering predators, or a certain cartel, coalition, or whatever of predators. So, anyways, all right, just that's what we observe is the quiet calamity, and we articulate this so kinfolk can be further mindful and increase proactive measures in strengthening a relationship and safety and security for spouses, family, friends, children, loved ones, community, clans, village, community, and further. Let's say community one further time. That's what we see as solution, relationship. Excuse me. All right. I'm going to the third thing. Not very. I'm not going to evaluate it right now, but just go to the third thing. All right. Okay. This is one thing that occurs to me is like a segue to the third thing, but I'm going to articulate it rather than trying to think of the third thing out right now. So whilst I think about this segue joint. Now, in that experience of individualism, some people can find ways of being effective in fending for oneself. Getting a job and just toting the line, getting in a routine. I know how to watch my back. I got my defense weapons, and I got this, that, and the other. I can take care of myself. So it's still individualism significantly. Don't trust other people because everybody it can be set up, can be scheming, can be grifting, whatever. So just on the Dolo style, there it is. Now, but eventually people get old, and then the body starts doing things, and you're like, I need somebody to take care of me. Who you trust? Who do you trust? Who I trust? Me. That's who. And you see where that went. Tony Montana. That's a very poor Italian Cubano accent. I don't know if there could be a proficient one actually. I'm doing rice right now. This is what this is. I don't know. Oh man, it's frustration when so much rice just gets burnt and stuck. So much rice gets burnt and stuck. It's frustrating today. So, talking about kinfolk being dolo and making do. Eventually, there's still that vulnerability and the necessity of relying upon others, generally speaking. Now, amidst this, I heard lyrics on the street yesterday, I think it was, Somebody was just bumping something, and I heard some of the lyrics. Don't try to listen to make music too tough, one way or the other, regardless of what the track is, because um, we have to be mindful of our minds, um, what our minds are fed. I heard this one. I'm going to speak to it because it applies to what I'm talking about now. But they were talking about the Brethren. It was a hip hop lyric, and he was talking about like not falling in love with a woman because that's what makes him weak. That what makes him vulnerable. I mean, it's the whole Superman thing back in 1980. Ooh, we got 80s reference for days today. If you remember that film, actually, it was Superman 2. And not Clark Kent, Christopher Reeves, and I forget. It's not Margot Kidder. I'm trying to remember. Anyways, in the second film, like he falls in love with Lois Lane, and so he wants to marry Lois Lane. But in order for him to marry Lois Lane, he has to lose his superpowers and become just a regular Earthling. And that's a metaphor of like how people can be very, particularly in this systemized individualism, people become very super individuals, and in order to be a partner with somebody else, have to make sacrifices, have to make compromises, can't be that career, that dream career, that dream job, that dream trip, whatever, that dream lust or whatever else. So, all right, it's not just a matter of like having to let go of selfish things, but there's when one opens up one's heart to that type to relationship, particularly marriage, vulnerability, and one leaves oneself open for betrayal, grift, and otherwise. Um, so, and that's what we're talking about in terms of super individualism, because when people are strong as individuals, but then think about marriage and partnership, and let's just say marriage. Think about marriage. That's opening oneself up. That's leaving oneself vulnerable, and that's extremely difficult for many kinfolk. Um, there's a twofold. Well, I'll put this. One of the reasons why this is because there are two significant tendencies in people's pursuit of relationship, or in people's experience of relationship between man and woman. One tendency is objectification of the other person, and the other tendency is predatoriness. So I've talked about before about the relationship being predatory, catching fish, hunting for numbers or whatever else. It's like this is a predatory mindset, and it's not necessarily conscientious, but it is a predatory mindset, and it's hunting for a trophy, hunting for a credential, a notch on the belt, or whatever else. And so those two significant tendencies that are frequent and unhealthy make one increasingly vulnerable, because in doing that, one is mindful of not being done like that, particularly objectified and predatorized. And part of the challenge also in that is that when that becomes like a predominant, when those are predominant like motivations and experiences within a person's pursuit of relationship and a person's experience of relationship, when one opens up oneself to relationship, then one is submitting oneself to the evaluation of the other person, and for whatever reason, the other person, valuing the first person less than what the first person values the first person as, that's existential malaise. That's trauma, and that's like it continues for life, and that's part of the predatoriness. Who's better than who deserves who's in whose league, and everything else like that. That's what the Buddha says 2,500 years ago. It's particularly and ultimately within marriage that all these contests and conquests is epitomized. So that's how one particularly leaves oneself vulnerable, even beyond grifts and betrayals, whatever else, is just by being devalued, and particularly in acquiescing. It's one thing, like, I don't care what that person says anyways, but it's like when somebody communicates, I like you. Oh no, and it's not reciprocated, or when one communicates an affinity to somebody else, then that person is like opening themselves up to acknowledging the legitimacy of that person's valuation towards the first person. And when that second person isn't feeling it, isn't doing whatever else, then that person is like, can't say, oh, well, I don't care anyway, da da da. No, they've already done it. They've already submitted to that evaluation. And now whoever they are is in many ways, in certain ways, less than who they were before, because they agreed to to submit to that evaluation. That is in the objectifying and predatory trope. And that's why many people are fearful of that, because it's serious and it can be extreme, and it's nasty. Now, one of the solutions of that, let me tell it. I'm in it right now, so what do I know? But one of the solutions is to get beyond the predatoriness and to get beyond the objectification and to focus on purpose. It's not about your ego. It's not about what your wants are. It's not about what your dreams are. It's not about your type. It's not even about your requirements, even, actually, to be honest. It's not about what your likes and dislikes are and whatever else towards somebody else. It's about what your purpose is in this life. What you need for yourself to do that purpose, to fulfill that purpose. And then somebody who shares that purpose. And then what you both need from each other in order to fill that purpose. Not what your opinions are, what your requirements are, or even what your family's requirements are, to be honest. It's what your purpose is and what you need to fulfill that purpose. And in being in relationship with somebody else, husband and wife, what the purpose requires of you both together in that process. So in that situation, you'd be like, yo, you share this purpose? Oh, you don't share this purpose? Okay, cool. Plain and simple. It's no devaluation. It's just like, okay, different things. It's not ego. It's not let down or whatever. It's just okay. Keep on searching. It's not objectification. And thus, like, if on the surface level, for those who are enveloped in the predatory and objectifying game, they see the outside of what somebody's doing and say, oh, they got played. Oh, da 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 da. Okay, whatever. They say to each his own. Anyway, so that's part of the consideration, is focusing on greater purpose and the relationship, marriage existing within that purpose, and finding kinfolk who share in that purpose. Now, again, let me tell it. I'm going to tell it further, God willing, a little bit further. Half past. Well, we're at 45 minutes. So we're getting to the hour near. We're getting to the hour near. All right. Heidi ba. All right. What else we got on this jump? Relationship. Purpose. Nature. Rhythm. Purpose, nature, rhythm. Relationship. That's what we're talking about. All right. So this is what we're finding. These are the notes that we're sharing as we're in the studies ourselves. Again, in terms of finding spouse, marital partner, it's for each of us to find our purpose in this life. What we're here to do. What is the purpose for a relationship? What's the purpose for marriage? And otherwise, according to what our beliefs are, and further. So it's for us to answer that. When we have an answer for that, it's for us to continue living life as best we can at this moment. And in doing that, it's getting accustomed, acculturating ourselves to the nature of where we are. Literally the nature, the climate, the environment, the life, the elements, the seasons, the food, the nutrients, kinfolk, where we are, the cycles and otherwise, the needs in the area. So cultivating ourselves to the nature, and as I said before, with the whole situation about the fruit trees, where one feels safe and secure planting a fruit tree, rather than going on a hunt, fishing for fish, or going on a big game hunt to find a wife, husband, or whatever else. It's a matter of cultivating a field, finding a field, and being in that field regular, getting a feel for that field, feeling the seasons, being regular, knowing the animals, getting accustomed to it, and being known in that field, being trusted in that field, being regular, and then from within that trust and regularity, then having the relationship naturally. That field might be the world, a world traveler that does whatever. That's what their job is. That's what their service is in this life. A journalist or whatever else, médecin sans frontières or whatever, and running in the same circles as somebody else. And that's the field. That's the purpose. That's the nature. And then the rhythm. That's the third part. Purpose, nature, rhythm. The rhythm is a regularity so that people can be seen, particularly a man can be seen by a woman, because what we observe in our species of our kind, and again, I'm not human, we're not human, but amidst our species, we're humanoids and we're similar to humans. What we observe is that women, it's very beneficial for women to be able to observe a man as a mating prospect, see what his behavior is without him knowing about her or seeing her, observing her, so she can quietly see how he is in different settings. And additionally, and again, that's why being at high school or whatever, you can hear from other people. You can get background checks very comparatively easily. I know that's so and so's cousin. Yeah, da 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 da. When one gets older and older and gets moving in different places, whatever, it becomes further difficult to get those background checks. So then it's a matter of observing the person in multiple settings and multiple interactions, whatever, not just when that person's on in a specific setting. So anyways, when a woman has that kind of comfort, then it's a matter of her kind of presenting herself either quietly, either directly, or one way or the other. And then from there, this is an island. This is a primordial island. Life is a primordial island. Every man, well, how about this? For a man, every other man is a replacement. Plain and simple. That's what it is. Every man is a replacement for a man. And every woman is a wife. That's a whole nother topic, and that's out there kind of thing. But the point for that is just to recognize the primordial relationship between a man and a woman. It's instantaneous. It's like procreation at that moment. It's civilization that slows it up or whatever, and there's reason for that. But just recognize when a woman is in a man's presence, that's vibrations. Serious vibrations, just primordially. So again, I say island. If you think about just being on an island for years, comfortable. It's you got food. There are animals there, but you don't see nobody for years and years and years. What's that called with Tom Hanks or whatever? Abandoned or whatever. Then all of a sudden, you see a woman. You don't even talk. She's been on there for years. Don't even talk. Animalistic. Blah. That's society. Every day. Anyways, I guess that's what society is. Somebody's been living Dolo style. Anyway, don't have to get too. We have to think of something else besides Freud when somebody's talking about themselves, self-awareness or whatever. Can we get past that kind of rather nouveau thing? How about get very Bhagavad Gita with that? Very self-aware. Getting very bodhisattva with that. The relationship. So again, purpose, nature, harmony, one's interactions with the environment, and additionally around with oneself and providing one service, being known for that, being comfortable, being trusted, and then Rhythm. That's particularly how we establish that trust and comfort. Is just being in the rhythms and attuned with the rhythms that are around the seasons, harvests, gatherings, um, moons, weeks, days of the weeks, and additionally regularity, sunrise, day rise, day set, and otherwise. Getting that rhythm, and with that purpose, nature, and rhythm, finding someone who's in that same situation. Now, one thing I'll say about myself, just because it has yet to get to an hour, so we have to, add things to this, of course. Um, what I'm recognizing, again, speaking English, most of my ancestors don't speak English. So even articulating words in that experience of relationship in a spiritual sense, the words get in the way. Gloria Estefan, Miami Sound Machine. Um, but that's facts, and we work with it, we work through it. But what I observe, particularly being a non-predator, as much as I can be, as much as a zebra in a zoo is a non-predator. Um, what happened is when there are those vibrations, when there is that primordial connection and then when utilizing words, English is a very imperialistic language. It's a very violent language, actually, to be honest. And so all the energy, not hating on English language, but that's actuality. All the energy influences. It gets into the relationship, particularly when just communicating, just beginning. Now, obviously, people are able to navigate through that or whatever. Some people have greater ability or propensity or capability or advantage in doing that than others. Um, but that phenomena, that imperialist phenomena, infuses itself even just within the relationship. So one solution is not to say words. Haha, we don't have to talk. Now it's obviously rather challenging for some kinfolk, but what I'm recognizing is actually, some people can do that, and that would be me too. Just like a woman seeing me, and this is what I'm getting to for myself. A woman seeing me and just be like, okay, yeah, he's cool. I feel comfortable, da da da. And then she doesn't even say nothing. She just sit next to me. And like, okay, let's go. And don't even say anything. Just go. There it is. Married. Eventually we may talk, but that's it. Um, Now that sounds wild. That sounds like macalicious. Do I have it like that? It's not a matter of having it like that or not having it like that. It is like that. Um, because that's the vibration and the wavelength that is necessary, to be honest. It doesn't have to actually happen specifically that way, but that's the type of vibration that's necessary. Because once speaking without a solid relationship, there's a lot of susceptibility towards sabotage. Even talking to parents, and additionally, wait a minute, what are you talking about not talking to parents? Parents are predatory. And we have to honor our parents. We love our parents, but recognizing that, um, again, recognizing the systemized individualism. The systemized individualism has a significant aversion and hostility towards a relationship. And when there's a prospect of people marrying and having children without permission, particularly, woody, sabotage, doubts, requirements. Uh, I heard they did this and this and this. I heard this, this and this and this. And when this and this and this, confusion, doubt, um, all these other things, from loved ones for all different types of reasons, from non-loved ones for all different types of reasons. So, anyways, I think that's what we have to share for that. How about a positive? Positive. There's something else. Those are the three main things I think that to share for the moment. There are some side note type of stuff, or not ones. I don't want to dismiss it as side note stuff, but there were some additional joints. But at the moment, rather than trying to scratch my head for the next 30 minutes, we're going to wrap this up by the grace of the Most High. How about this? Again, Haile Selassie I and Wise Zaraman in perfect balance, husband and wife, sovereign mindset. Recognizing a greater purpose, working together in partnership through thick and thin, through the turmoil, all the ambitions that surround and otherwise, the corruptions and jealousies and everything else. There is a shared purpose. There is a shared nature, Ethiopia, and the diversity within Ethiopia. And there's a shared rhythm, being in the same circles, social and otherwise. The nobility of Ethiopia. Working with family, arranging and making agreements through family, having the support of family, having the support of a language that supports that union and that marriage. It's not a systemized individualistic system at that moment. The world is different today, significantly, than it is 100 years ago. So this is some of what we learned. Now, with that being said, we bounce. Oh, that was the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays. The Blue Jays. Blue Jays. Blue Jays. Blue Jays. Oh, what you acting scary for? One thing I'll say, the sparrows are here now. Did you hear that? That was a different Blue Jay saying, "What's up?" I was about to say, "There are sparrows." That's not the one that was scary. That's a different one. That sounded like a boss Blue Jay. And here comes the other Blue Jay that was just there. Now things been cleared. Another Blue Jay. Oh, okay. We like the rice. Sometimes sparrows can be further courageous than the Blue Jays. Now that's no dig on the Blue Jays, but that's just showing about like sparrows sometimes like got handle business. One thing I will share about, on this note about relationships too, is that I start putting food out for the birdies over a year ago, probably maybe like going on 2 years now, actually probably over a year and a half. And when I first began doing it, like I could recognize sparrows. Particularly, there's one sparrow I remember that was looked like a mixed sparrow. I'm pretty confident it was a mix between a cardinal and a sparrow. Very red in terms of the neck and the head, but otherwise looking very much like a sparrow. And so, I mean, doing it day in, day out, regular schedule, basically rising with the sun. And there being a regularity, the birds have a regularity, and then I see the birds, and so get a rapport. Now the birds know me. Serious, the birds know. And then like I would see the next generation. I saw another cardinal. I could see like the new hatchlings emerging, and then going through that process through the spring of flying, and then the new hatchlings arriving. I've seen that a number of times now. But the first time I see that, there was a sparrow, and I was like, yo, I know who your parents are. Like I know, like I could tell the sparrow was the child of that one sparrow that was mixed, cardinal and sparrow, because the child was like similar and smaller, but still like similar. So I'm like, yo, I remember your parents. Now, since then, there's been a number of generations in this experience of doing it. And what I recognize is that it's not a given. Just like putting food out here, just because the sparrows know me at one point, don't mean the sparrows are going to remember me at some future point. Like, what have you done for us lately? Now, is that Jody Watley or Janet Jackson? Either way, there it is. So there's a regularity and a continuity, a continualness. And the positive rapport is a beautiful, sacred blessing, but it's not a given, and it's not owed. Birds owe me nothing. And whatever affinity may be experienced at the moment, ain't no guarantee of it existing a month from now or a year from now. it's very practical. I talked to Uncle a couple years ago talking about feeding the birds. He's like, "Oh yeah, birds only come around when you got food for them." And I mean that's life. You know that. I mean, he know that too. Um, so yeah, it might be like all people can reduce it to a quid pro quo, whatever else, and fair weather kind of. But yo, this is we do what we do. So it's a matter of sharing the light. Um, and there's a lot of gifts that are shared in the process. The energy it's a it's a healthy healing energy, to be honest. So I appreciate having breakfast with the Blue Jays. Uh, we give all thanks and praise to the Most High, Elohim, known by many names and beyond all names. Blessed love and peace of Rastafari.